So this right here was the last time we hear about Christ in scripture at the age of 12, after his parents, Joseph and Mary, find him in the temple, speaking with the elders until he turns 30. So let's take a look at the clues and facts from history on where he was. So we know that he lived in Nazareth and he didn't start his ministry until the age of 30. So where was he between the age of 12 to 30? Let's take a look at John 3:15, which says, "For I have given you an example, that ye should do even as I have done to you." This is Christ speaking at a later age, of course, once he started his ministry. So in order to show us the way, Christ gave up his deity, stepped into man, or you say body. So he functioned as a man that had to follow the order that he created from childhood on up. Right? Also in scripture, the scripture also tells us that obedience is better than sacrifice. All right, remember that because it is plays a big portion on where Christ was. Also in Ephesians chapter 1, the Bible tells us to do what? It tells us to obey our parents and to honor them. In the Gospel of Luke chapter 2, verse 41 through 52. Yeshua is what? He's missing for 3 days. His parents is desperately worried, trying to find him. When they find him in the temple. And what does Yeshua say? He says, "Why were you worried? Shouldn't you have known I would be about my Father's business?" We have to pay attention to the tone and the setting of what Yeshua is talking about here. So let's go back to when the angel appeared to Mary and told her that the Spirit of God was going to impregnate her and that he's going to be the Messiah and save the world. So at this moment right here, Yeshua is kind of confused. Like, why are you worried about me? About my whereabouts? Out of all the people, you should know that I would be about my Father's business. You would directly received the word from the angel. So even at this moment, Mary and Joseph didn't fully understand who he was. So what happens after that, right? The scripture goes on to tell us in Luke chapter 2, verse 51, that he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was subject to them, and his mother kept these sayings in her heart. Which means that in order to be obedient and honor his parents, he humbled himself as the creator to follow his parents' wishes, which was to go back to Nazareth, which is coincides with Ephesians and also John 3:15. So what Christ is doing here, he's saying, you guys still fully don't understand, but as my parents, because you want me to come back home with you, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to be obedient to the law, right? What did Christ say about the law? He said, I came to fulfill the law. So in order to fulfill the law, what did Christ have to do? He had to be obedient to it in order to fulfill it. So he goes back to Nazareth with them, right? So now let's take a look at Nazareth. What is Nazareth about? A little history on Nazareth. Nazareth is a small town which no one really knows about. After Christ gets baptized by John, the scripture says, I believe it was Philip, he says, can anything good come out of Nazareth? A lot of people take that scripture and believe that Nazareth, the setting of that Nazareth was a horrible place where robbery and thieves happened. But that's untrue. Nazareth was a small town, a poor town, but everybody in that town looked after each other. They worked together. They were real big on the Jewish culture and the Jewish laws. So that means that if Joseph and Mary lived there, that means that they would have to had raised Christ under the Jewish culture, under the Jewish law, and under the Jewish law at that time. I'm not sure if it's the same way now, but at that time, the way the children were brought up, they would have to learn the Torah, which is the first 10 books of the Bible, right? And have it memorized. As the children got older, the ones who were wise, so if we go back to the scripture, the scripture tells us that once he became subjected to them, the last statement it says about Yeshua, it says that he grew in wisdom and stature. So if we compare that to our timing now, we would say that Christ was a genius. He was beyond his years. In the Jewish culture at that time, if you were on that level, on that genius type level of understanding the scriptures uh, and understanding the laws, you would have the ability to talk to the elders. Huh? This is why we see Christ being able to go to the temple and talk to the elders. And what was the expression of the elders? They were in awe of his understanding. All right? They were in awe of his understanding. So, the reason why also Christ didn't start his ministry until the age of 30, because he was subjected to his parents. And under their culture, under their law, it states that you are not allowed to start your ministry or speak publicly until the age of 30, which makes sense of why Christ did not start his ministry until the age of 30, because he had to follow the law and be obedient to it, which is what? Setting the example, being obedient to his parents, and also see, Christ could have took the other option, which would be the sacrifice, and say, hey, I know who I am. I know I'm the Messiah, and I need to be over here ministering the gospel even at a young age. But what does the scripture say? He cannot go against what's already written because he is the word. And the scripture says what? Obedience is better than sacrifice. So he became subjected to his parents and went back home with them to Nazareth and was brought up under the Jewish culture so that he can fulfill the law. So, in conclusion to this, from the age of 12 to 30, Christ was at home in Nazareth living an ordinary life.